Hey now, welcome to the Dirty Side of the Track, America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian, that's Rob. We have a special guest. Pitlane Paul is joining us all the way from Australia, where he's like a day in the future. So we'll figure out how that works shortly. But Paul, thanks for joining us, man.
Hey, no worries. Good to be back. Even though you've literally made me wake up very early in the morning.
That was
Just
Vale,
to
just
be
for the record, that was Vale.
well, no, just to be fair, when we put out the we'll send you over the questions because we're going to do a Q&A with you today, and we said we'll send them over to you, you can record it, you can send it back. You then came back with, no, let's do it live. Here's some times I'm available. So you offered these up, Mr. Harris.
And I don't deny that I offered them up, but it's all like when you go into someone's house and they say make yourself at home. You literally, it's I was thinking if I offer these times up, at least there's a bit of love in your heart where you won't go, oh yeah, let's get you up at like 7 o'clock on a Monday morning to do this. But no, listen, no, no hard feelings.
And I was feeling bad about it until you showed us the view out of your window in the vineyard that you are up in the Adelaide Hills. So I'm really kind of not feeling so bad anymore now because you've. I was going to say you've got an amazing view because if you look up, you've got the beautiful scenery outside. You look down, you've got me and Brian. I mean, what else could you want, hey?
Yes, what else could you want? To be absolutely fair, it's one of those areas where it's so beautiful, it's so stunning. To actually be awake early to see it isn't so bad. And I am definitely talking about the vineyard and not you two.
Yeah,
Fair
not
enough.
that bad. Definitely doesn't describe either Rob nor I. But anyway, on today's episode, we have Paul. And so we're going to quickly do some news and social, quick video vault. You guys have submitted a bunch of questions for Paul. We'll get through those with him and kind of get his perspective and a quick preview of Australia to follow. So, Rob, do you want to start us off with some of the news, buddy?
Yeah, and this is one that might be close to Paul's heart with the team that he spent many years with. But Toto is already worried about what he's seeing on track with the new Mercedes. Has kind of come out and said that obviously they had the initial zero side pod thing that didn't work out, and this time around they're already seeing some problems where they're not seeing on track the same thing that the simulator was telling them that they were going to be seeing once they applied these kind of the way they're running their wing, the way they're running everything. He said, one of the journalists said, "Is it as simple as just playing with what you've got and tuning it?" He said, "No, I think it's a bit of a biggie. There's only so much you can tune here. Our simulations point us in one direction and gives you a kind of a setup range that we can choose. But regardless of what we're doing with the back wing, it's not a massive corridor of performance we can unlock here." So I don't know. Is he playing his cards close to his chest there, Paul, or have they screwed the pooch for a second time around on these concepts?
Well, I mean, yeah, due to the limited amount of testing you actually have, it's pretty hard to, when you get the car in a simulator, then and then what you're thinking that's what it should be on track. So what he's saying is probably fair. I don't think it's as bad as what he's making out. The problem is Red Bull are so far away, and when Red Bull are that far away, it's always hard to judge your own performance. I think they might have got it wrong, and I think what he's saying is probably fair. But at the same time, yeah, he isn't going to come out and say, "No, the car's fantastic, the car's brilliant." I just think it's that, yeah, I just think it's that usual sort of team thing where they're like, oh, "Okay, well, you got to bear in mind that the sponsors are playing money into the car, playing money into everything, and it isn't performing. So you've got to sort of come out and say something." So, yeah, I don't think he's wrong, but it's something which isn't a shock to me to go out and say the car sort of sucks a little bit.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think the hard part, right, is especially we hear people saying, well, we saw in the simulator what's actually happening on track. We're seeing a few teams say that. And when he says our sensors and simulations say that in certain speed range, we should have a certain amount of aerodynamic load, but in reality, we don't. I think that was what people were kind of looking at as the simulations didn't tell them what to expect, which is not good to build off of, though. I guess we'll see what happens, but, it could be worse. I guess it could be worse. It could be Alpine.
Yeah, yeah. And talking to other
Yeah,
teams,
yeah.
Lando wants changes to be made to the ground effect cars. He said, look, even though we're not getting the porpoising that we're getting like we did last year, still huge toll on the body. The way the car's getting sucked down to the ground, running so low. Just says it's still in pain after race weekends. I don't know. I'd never driven an F1 car in my life, so I'm not really one to comment here. But
No crap.
without the porpoising, I'm just kind of thinking, unless it's dangerous. This is a physical sport. There are a lot of G-forces, so don't they just have to get on with it? Unless it's actually dangerous.
Well, look, I don't really disagree with you too often, Mister Vale, and I'm not going to disagree here. For me, it's sort of like, listen, it's it's hard on the body, it's a toll, it's physical, it's demanding, it's everything. Yeah, you don't have the porpoising, so look, it's the sport. What do you want? Do you want to be sat in an armchair driving the car, or does it need to be physical? So, again, I'd say he's got a point. I think it is probably painful. It is probably sore. Again, I've never driven a car, also, but yeah, that's what the sport is. It's hard on your body. Full stop. Get
And I
on with
guess
it.
with the increased calendar there now, there's less opportunity to maybe rest up in between races. But in the same way that sometimes I don't feel too sorry for Premier League footballers when there's too many games and they have a midweek game as well as a weekend game. I'm like, it's kind of what you pay to do. So unless it's actually crossing over the boundaries of being dangerous or bad for you, I think you kind of have to suck it up. There's a lot of people sitting in those reserve spots that would love to take it off you, Lando, if you've had enough.
Well, exactly. And just one thing to touch on there, and I think I spoke to you guys about this on many, many episodes, is yeah, okay, look, there are a lot more races now, but you think then back 10, 15 years ago, they sort of had unlimited testing as well. So more often than not, you do a race weekend, then you go back to Barcelona and do a 3-day test, do a race, go to Monza, do a 3-day test. So yeah, look, there are a lot more races. They are a little bit more demanding, but back in the day, that they did still do the same amount of mileage as well. So yeah, get on with it, Lando.
The next one starts off kind of in the negative, the story, but then I love the way I'm going to bring it to the positive. Just hold on for this one. All those rumors about Felipe Massa being so honked off about the 2008 title, and in particular the race, the crash gate, and what that meant, and how the season was adjudicated, and what came down to the end in Brazil. He has officially filed a lawsuit over that 2008 title, but Heinz Harald Frentzen, who has become a pretty big user of Twitter and is pretty funny and interacts with people really nicely, he came out and put a comment underneath that, along with a handful of other people. But Heinz Harald's was my favorite. I think Jack in '97 was running illegal fuel, and I'm looking for a lawyer as well. So we'll find out if if Jack Villeneuve was running illegal fuel, which I love the joke in '97, because of course that
Jack
was
Villeneuve. I think I know that name.
A friend of the show, shall I? Paul brought him on for us. So.
This is Jacques Villeneuve, and you're listening to the dirty side of the track.
In '97, we all know they tied the qualifying time with Schumacher in there, but it was illegal fuel. He's getting a lawyer, and we all had a good laugh because none of us want to deal with the real consequences of Felipe Massa's lawsuit about 2008.
And then carrying on the good old rumors. Oh, sorry, go on, Paul.
Just going to say, yeah, it's an interesting one with Massa because people, I think what he's more suing for is the lack of financial gain that he had about being a world champion. Rather than, I don't think, especially he wants Lewis to be stripped and him to be awarded. You just can't do that. I think more so for him is the financial step up of being a world champion. So it's, yeah, I mean, I understand this point of view. I get it, but it's a little bit. Yeah, for me, it's just a little bit like childish. Again, like Lando, look, get on with it, guys. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. You can't. How far do we go back? What do we do? So yeah. Anyway, moving on. Apologies.
It's weird he left it so long before taking any legal action. So if he'd have done this like the year following or a couple of years after, said, "Hey, I've lost out on all these earnings from not being a world champion," maybe you'd have got it. But it's a long time ago. Yeah, they're just some random rumors that I found that I didn't even bother. I just thought it'd be better if I just did completely random rumors and didn't even get sources for it.
Do you want the chopper for it? Or
no? I'd love to be above the rumor mill, please. Okay, first random rumor. Lawrence Stroll has said he will do whatever it takes to bring Verstappen to Aston Martin. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb and say the whatever it takes does not involve in getting rid of Lance. Getting rid of Lance.
No.
Oh God!
It cannot.
I'm gonna. What are we giving that in strength of from a lane rating there, Paul? You're giving it a thumbs up or a thumbs down for a rumor there. Is Stroll going to get to take Max to Aston Martin? Oh, he's thinking.
Absolutely
he's thinking.
Not.
Oh,
no.
Absolutely not. There it is. Second
No.
random rumor. And this one I don't really think is too much of a random rumor. I think it was probably quoted in the press. But Helmut Marko saying that Danny Ricciardo needs a massive upturn in form very soon. Otherwise, they're set to ditch him as a Red Bull option. I don't think that's a rumor. That's probably fact because he's not setting the world alight right now, and he's getting outperformed by Yuki. So I don't know.
For me, that's nailed on. Yeah, not for me. Sorry, guys. He's a lovely man. Let's leave it there. That's as far as I go with Danny Rick. He's not, you know, if Max ends up leaving Red Bull, if he stays at Red Bull, whichever decision, you want someone in that car who's gonna rag the bones off it. And sadly, Danny Rick's he's never really been that guy. So, yeah, okay. Look, you're gonna look. They're gonna look. I don't know. Yeah, no, not for me.
And last one, which is a random one, although maybe goes with the first one about Lawrence Stroll will do whatever it takes, is really kind of a swirling set of rumours for Alonso to Mercedes next year. I'm not sure they would go in for the elder statesman now, and whether that would upset the apple cart with George. And there's all these rumours about taking on the youngster whose name escapes me now that I can't remember.
Kimi.
Antonelli?
Antonelli.
So what do you think, Brian? What are you giving this one on the rumour scale?
No, I still think it's if Max leaves, I think he goes to Mercedes not because I heard anything or saw anything. I saw something. The picture of Yas and Toto after the first race, chatting for a while. I don't see them as being buddies. I could be wrong. Maybe they're really. But the way Abu Dhabi 21 went down and the whole 21 season, I didn't see them as book club members. And so it felt like there was something behind that. So I don't see Alonso going to Merck, but I could be wrong.
I would say Alonso. Look, Mercedes need a Class A driver to go there. They need a headliner. In fairness, Alonso does fit the bill, but then Mercedes is going to want someone 2 to 3 years. Let's say. I mean, Fernando surely hasn't got that long left. And he's driving superb. There's no reason why not. But I'm still sticking to my guns. Max is definitely going to Mercedes to partner George. Albon will pretty much definitely probably go to Red Bull, or even Alonso will then go to Red Bull when that seat opens. So I really, absolute, Alonso to Merck. It's possible, but I just don't see it. I don't see why Merck would do that. But he does fit their bill.
And you heard it here on the Dirty Side of the Track podcast.
Right, Brian, do you want to do the couple of Twitter things that you found?
Interesting stat that I saw and Lee from the Discord saw as well. Ollie Behrman, first driver in F1 history to share the grid with the F1 champion of his birth year, which is 2005, and it's Fernando. So speaking of a guy who was getting longer in the driving tooth, he was the champion the year he was born. Anyway, not just on the grid.
It's insane, isn't it? Just how long Fernando has been around and just how young Behrman is.
Yes.
It's just double insane.
I mean, yes. And then the second one is from listener Adam. He sent this in, and then when I made a comment about it, he said, well, you should check it out. And I said, that's not how this works. That's your job. And if this is wrong and someone tells us, Adam, it's on you. But in 1984, a teenager named Zach Brown, who we're all familiar with, was on Wheel of Fortune. He won $3,050, and he spent all the money to buy a go-kart. He obviously went on to become CEO of McLaren's F1 team. But I think it's hilarious that young Zach Brown in 1984 was on Wheel of Fortune and used all his money on a go-kart. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I like to think it is because I like that story.
Yeah, let's just go with it. It was true.
Let's go with that. That's a great story. We're happy with that.
We'll spread that one. Right, and last but not least, before we go to the video vault, listener Ala Daniel from South Wales sent us in a picture. He's a trucker from South Wales. He sent us in a picture of his cab, of his rig, and they're proudly playing on the radio, but on his audio system was the Dirty Side of the Track podcast. So thank you for listening, Ala. And it got me thinking. I don't know. I just assume people listen in their houses, but if you listen to us in random places, let us know. Send us in a picture of wherever you listen to the Dirty Side of the Track, and we'll give you a shout out like we did to Alad. So appreciate you listening, Alad. Appreciate you sending in the picture, and keep on trucking.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was a great picture. All right, we're going to do the video vault quickly. Let's get the door open and a few things we want to highlight. And this week, the first one, the star of it, is with us here. I was going through the interwebs on Thursday night here in America, maybe it was Wednesday night, and I'm looking for fun videos, and I'm clicking through the teams, and I see a short, and it says, "Who are you going to call?" on the Sauber channel. And I'm like, oh, all right, check this out. And it's who's famous in your phone. And the second person up says Paul Harris. And I go, hang on a second. That's Pitlane Paul. And then they cut to Pitlane Paul, and he's talking about his phone. I'm like, Paul is famous on the internet, on the Sauber YouTube short. That was really cool. I saw that and I sent it to you, you and Rob on WhatsApp real fast and had a good laugh. But yeah, good work, Paul.
I'm disappointed, Paul, that the two most famous people in your phone book wasn't Ryan and Rob, but I guess Paolo Maldini and Duff McKagan are slightly more global reach than us, but only a smidge. Only a smidge. I guess it was a real close run thing.
Yeah, I considered everybody, and sadly, I didn't want to over publicize the show. Is where I was. So yeah, I went for Maldini and Duff. Yeah.
By the way,
hey, this is Duff McKagan, and you're listening to the Dirty Side of the Track podcast.
So I got Duff when he introduced Paul, but yeah, sorry.
Paul, who was it that has you down as the most famous person in their phone book?
That's Dominique. She is our sort of like marketing liaison officer, if you like, for the team. But yeah, she's really good fun. And we were just in the pit lane, and Pitlane Paul. We were just in the pit lane, and she was literally like, you have to do this video. And Saya, who's our amazing video capture guy, just sort of shoved this camera in my face, going like, "Oh, who is the most famous person in your phone book?" And I'm like, "Oh." So yeah, it was not at all pre-planned. It was quite. And then she said, "Oh, I chose you." And I was like, "Yeah, you loser." And it turned out she did. I was like, "Oh no."
We had
fantastic.
That's fantastic. We had a couple of videos. Mercedes had a 13-minute version on why they struggle in high-speed corners. And Rob, I watched this last week, the tech corner, and they talked about some of their overheating, and you said it was boring and you fell asleep and you didn't make it that far. Well, I didn't even get into a minute and a half. I tried. It was just I lost it. On the positive note, Lollipopman was fantastic. Again, after Saudi Arabia, nailing it. And then 3 videos that are worth noting: Charles Leclerc's new Ferrari SP3 Daytona and car spotting in Monaco on the Restricted Spotter Monaco channel. I'm really digging, man. I am deep into these holes looking for videos. It's just over 10 minutes. The Charles part is maybe 45 seconds, but his car is awesome. And seeing them drive it out of the Ferrari dealership in Monaco, I'm like, yeah, that's cool. So if you have 45 seconds, just page over to that one. Solving F1 anagrams with Max and Checo. It's 4 minutes and 30 seconds on the Red Bull Racing channel. It was fun. It became a little frustrating, like if you're ever watching a game show and you know the answer right away and they're taking forever, because I have the luxury of seeing all the letters and kind of thinking about it without a camera in my face, as Paul said, being put on the spot when you're asked about your phone book. And they're trying to solve it. But I'll tell you, Nico Hulkenberg's name scrambled around is pretty easy to figure out, and it took him quite a while. And I'm yelling at the TV, "It's Nico effing Hulkenberg!"
Did it say Hiko Nolkenberg? And they still couldn't get it?
Basically. And then the last one, and this is the one I recommend. It's longer, but we'll close with this one. The extended interview, Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc chat with Martin Brundle on Sky Sports F1. It's nearly 20 minutes, so you got to want it. But Martin, and this is clearly before Bahrain, so Carlos knows that Lewis is taking his seat, and that's a lot of the questions. But Martin didn't ask any softballs. He asked real questions. But Carlos did not yet know that his appendix was getting angry at him. So it's at that point in time before he understood his appendix situation, but he understood he wasn't being in Ferrari in 25. It's 20 minutes long. I kind of enjoyed it. There's, some softballs, but it was kind of cool to see, somebody process something like this and figure out what's going to come next for them, and shout out to all of them, but especially Carlos. So that's what I had. Rob, anything to add or anything? Notes?
No,
comments?
I would close the video vault, and then I think it might be Pitlane Paul music we should probably queue up.
Pitlane Paul music. Paul, you ready for your music, man?
Well, let's go for it. Yeah.
Okay,
right.
so for the last 2 weeks across various social channels, we've been throwing out a call to arms to come and ask your burning questions to Pitlane Paul, and we've got one, two, three, four, five, seven, maybe 8 or 9 different people threw questions in, and some people put multiple in. So we've probably got about somewhere 16 to 20 questions for you, Paul. And I'm going to say they are all over the grid. So be prepared, just like the camera in the face. Be prepared to go all over the place here. So we will start off. Fantasy HQ. Very first question out of the gate. They obviously wanted to know the burning question was, do you play F1 Fantasy? I think you do. I think you're in our league, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, I am pretty rubbish at it, which is also good. Yeah, I do. It's really like it's obviously you sort of get a little bit of an inside knowledge of what's good and what's bad before the season. So you just sort of like put all your eggs in one basket and go for it, and then it turns out you know zero. As you're, languishing down the bottom of the league, and you guys all celebrating on this silly podcast about how good you are and how good Brian is, being someone at the top. And I literally, like probably all the rest of the listeners on this podcast, just waiting for my team's name to be read out, and it never does unless you cover the bottom three. I'm sort of like, I'm that guy. So yeah, I do. Remarkably, I'm really bad at selecting them as well. So yeah, F1 experts down the drain in one question.
Take the next one, Brian, then I'll hand over to you because this one I think I'm rephrasing a little bit because I think they asked this a while ago when all the legal stuff was maybe flying around about the current team you're in and the team name and whether stake was going to be dropped or not. So I'm going to kind of rephrase it to sort of say, does that kind of stuff actually impact you at all? When all the stuff is flying around about whether or not you're going to be allowed to call stake and are you going to have to take the sponsor off the car and blah, 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 blah. Does it really impact you and the rest of the team, or do you just go about your business regardless of what you called?
Yeah, and again, that's a really good question. So, I mean, from our side, the honesty is it doesn't bother us because, I've got to give the politically correct answer here, or the real answer, I guess. So, the politically correct answer is no, it doesn't bother us, and that's down to the team to iron out all of those things and make sure that X, Y, Z, and then you just sort of waiting. That's the politically correct answer. The honest answer is, look, when it's sort of like being banded around and you don't know what you called, it just for me makes it all look a little bit, a little bit amateur, a little bit unprofessional. And from our point of view, you just sort of sat there thinking, well, I don't see how we're in this situation. Sadly, what you tend to find nowadays, and this has always happened. Like, you've got Visa Cash App, whatever they call it. I still don't know what a team is called. You've got our one, which is Stake F1 Team Kick Sober. So, like here in Australia, for instance, we're not allowed to use a stake. So, I still have got no idea what the team's called for this weekend. Are we just called Kick Sober, or is it Sober F1 Team, or is it F1 Team Kick? So, yeah, it doesn't bother me. It's just I look at it and just sort of like for me, it's really unprofessional to not to have these sort of like no clues about your team. But sadly, that sponsorship it's happened for years. Go back to Dave Marlborough, Ferrari, Rothmans, Williams, West McLaren. You got to bear in mind that was even if you like a team. It's Red Bull in theory are just a sponsor that's badged the team as well. So it's not unusual for these sponsorships to be in. It's the legal market and how you can and can't call a team out is pretty. It doesn't bother us. Is the short answer, but you sort of sit there shaking your head like how we got to these guys, how's this happening?
What do you think last week of Ollie Behrman and what he showed in one race? So one race. What do you think that means for him in 25? Right, we obviously had a larger sample set with Liam Lawson last year. But I'm curious your thoughts on, is that something enough? Does it warrant further investigation from teams? Because a guy just rocks in. I know he was in a Ferrari, but he just walks in from F2 and first time and went for it. How impactful is that?
Look, he's a fellow Brit, and I think he did amazingly well. Let's not my answer here is going to sound really awful, but let's go for it. Everyone calm down. okay. This guy came in, he jumped in, he had a practice session, he did really well, he did okay in qualifying, in a car that potentially could have been in the top four. And he did well in the race. Physically, the physical toll on his body, we just spoke about what Lando's saying. Let's not make any mistake. He did very well. But at the same time, everyone needs to calm down. And I'm just going to give you one name very quickly just to show how realistic this situation is. And that's Nick de Vries.
Yep.
He came in, he did really well. Everyone was so like, you're the next Michael Schumacher, Mick Hakkinen rolled into one. It's this excellent driver. And then they give him a race seat and he bums out. So I'm not going to discredit Behrman like that. And the same as Liam Lawson, he did well. But, everyone just needs to sort of calm down on these things. He did really well, but stop chucking this guy and thinking he's the next big thing, and he needs a race seat next year. He needs this, he needs that. Just remember Nick de Vries.
Right.
What happened with him?
One race, Monza, he did get the Williams in the points, but it was once exactly to your point. And Liam at least had 4 or 5. Like he had 4 races. He had a sample set a little larger. But anyway, good point. Thank you. Rob, back to you.
Yeah, last couple from Fantasy HQ before we move on to other people. What are some of the differences in leadership style that you see between, I'm going to mess this, aren't I? Looney Bravi, that your team principal, right? And say Fred Vasseur.
Yep.
What kind of differences do you see between team principals and how they all operate?
For a team principal, I'm going to give you the best example. You've got Toto, who I've worked with for years. I know I've mentioned on previous pods how Toto is his style and what he did for me personally. Then, Alessandro is a lovely guy. He's, he's been in the sport for a long time. He's not a natural team leader. You wouldn't see, for me, I don't see Alessandro really, less coming down to, say, the mechanic level, coming down to sort of like the team level. He's more of a figurehead for the team. So I don't actually see him as a leader. I don't see him as the guy who's going to drive that team forward in the same way, like, say, Toto would, or, if I can use Christian Horner's name at the moment, or, these guys, they have that authority where, like, you think, they're going to go and drive the team forward. They're going to go and actively make changes if things are not going well. Fred going to Ferrari, for me, was always a bit of I think Ferrari's the worst job in Formula One. And that's simply because the weight of expectation is so high in a Ferrari camp, and if you don't deliver pretty much straight away, the Italian knives are out, and it's really passionate over there. So for a team leader to go into someone like Ferrari, I think you need to be ballsy, punchy. You need to go in there, axe swinging, and sort of make changes, so on and so forth. Same as what Toto would do. Alessandro, he's just more of like a figurehead. So no, good question. I would say there are massive styles. But at the same time, it's certain teams need strong leaders and really strong leaders. Mercedes have had the best guy in F1. I'm going to be biased with Toto. Red Bull have done remarkably well with Christian in his leadership. Coming back down the grid to the bottom half, look, I think all these teams need really strong leaders. So there is a massive difference between who is in charge of teams, who isn't in charge of teams, and the way that they operate. Alessandro is never going to be a Toto. And I don't mean that as a negative, by the way. That
just different style.
Completely different. Yeah, it's totally different styles of running a team. If Toto came down to someone like Stake F1 team, Kick Sauber, if he came down to someone like them guys, the change that guy has to do to bring that team up to that level, he would completely change the discipline of everything. And that's just not the way that it works down there. So, hugely different styles. And it's fascinating to see. And also, sorry, I know it's a long answer. You got to bear in mind we have Andreas Seidel in the camp as well. He in theory is the guy who's running the team with I'm not going to do the team name again. We want to keep this under 4 hours. But, so again, Andreas is also the guy who's sort of like, I would say, more technically involved with changing the team. So, again, he has another style. So it's massively different team to team, and
What's Paul? Thank you for that. What's the craziest hazing story you're able to share with us? Because the question was, people here like 10 years ago and beyond that, there was a lot of hazing in the camps. And you've told us about some of the shenanigans that would go on, and especially the whacking of the knackers, and you've shared as I wouldn't use here in America normally. And so you've talked about that, and you've talked about other people giving it a try, but like hazing wise, whether it's new team members, mechanics, drivers, whatever, what's one of the ones you're able to share from back in the day?
Well, I mean, the one thing I just want to start by saying is I don't know if I've just turned that point of being old, so on and so forth, and not down and trendy with the kids, but what in God's name does hazing mean?
Given
I would say initiation ceremony. Think
Yeah.
about like sending somebody out in the yard to go and sending them off to the store to get tartan paint. Just kind of silly initiation,
I'm
silly
getting old.
initiations.
Yeah, I'm not down with the kids anymore. It's just depressing now. Right, okay, no, I mean the classic. There's loads of good F1 stories of new people. I mean, I think I might have mentioned the air sample. The air sample is always a classic where, you get someone with a bag to run the length of the pit lane because everyone knows what they're doing, and like everyone then goes out and actively encourages the newbie to do it differently, or no, the airbox is about a foot lower. You've got to go a foot lower and do it. So yeah, you have that. The worst ones in F1 are actually people leaving. People leaving teams are normally the worst ones. They'll get a cable tied to the tire trolley. Catering will store all the leftover food for the week, so there'll just be a bin at the back. So any leftovers they have get put into the bin. So you have this load of slops. They get chucked over the poor person. We've dyed people blue before.
You've dyed people blue?
Yeah, I'll try and find some photos. Yeah, that's quite a common one. So you get if you imagine coolants, some of the coolants in the car, it's just clear liquid, literally clear water. So you put like a blue dye in it. So if you see any leaks, you can tell if it's what it is. Obviously, if it's blue that's leaking, it's obviously water. So teams have got an endless supply of blue dye. So if you're in the airport and then you see someone basically looking like a Smurf walking through, you're thinking, "Oh yeah, where you leaving to?" They're like, "Yeah," or and again, you can cable tie someone to a trolley. You've done everything to them. You've literally covered them in food. You've dyed them. You've literally tarred and feathered them sometimes, and then you just go on a tire trolley and then chuck them into the garage of the other team on their floor. And this other team are like, "Oh, jeez, here we go." Like, you know what I mean? This poor person. And that, by the way, that happens with drivers too. I just mentioned Nick de Vries. When he left Mercedes, I mean, if you actually look back and Google this, you'll see it. We did the same to Nick de Vries when he left Mercedes to go and drive for AlphaTauri. They literally tarred and feathered Nick, covered him in loads of crap, and then wheeled him down to AlphaTauri and left him in their garage on the trolley on the floor. So yeah, drivers also get it. So yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Drivers also get it. So yeah, if that's hazing, yeah, it's a new word.
Yeah,
hazing,
I think that fully fits the bill. Right, moving on to different personalities. So these are all from threads. So we had Vroomy Sarah B. She's asked two, and the first one was, "What's your favourite memory of working with Schumacher?"
Oh, there are so many. If I'm gonna go the nice answer, it's gonna be definitely his podium. When we've done well, Monaco. Did he qualify in pole or second place in Monaco? Okay, we had a 5-place penalty, but yeah, the fact that the guy was able to come back and still perform to this ridiculous level in a car that wasn't really great. Nothing's going to beat me whacked in the knackers in the pit lane in Barcelona because, like, again, if you imagine LeBron James or some of these guys walking down the pit lane and like the whole grandstand opposite, like looking at this god of a human, and then you get whacked in the knackers by him. So, but I won't go too much into Michael again. He was an amazing guy. It's so different to what anyone thinks Michael actually ever was. His playful side was way more than what you'd ever expect. So yeah, being whacked in the knackers wasn't a shock. Being chucked in the pool, me and him starting a big pool party on his retirement night. That was a that was a good one. He came over and said, like, we're going in the pool, right? And like the security made a big line, like, nah, you're not going in the pool, guys. Like, yeah, we are. Yeah, we are going in the pool. So we started this, to the point that the security either moved or went in with us. So the guy was brilliant fun. Yeah, being whacked in the knackers, because it was just so funny. The reaction of the crowd, the reaction of most people, like, oh dear, and a mixture of sadness and joy, annoyingly from people. So yeah, it's going to be the knacker shot. I'm telling you.
Paul, Vroomies Arabi is another one. What is your favorite role among those you've played in F1 so far?
I mean, this one's pretty good. I mean, like I said, I'm literally, setting the scene. We've just been up in the Adelaide. We've just been in Adelaide and Adelaide Motorsport Festival. Now you're going to see a lot of this on the Sky production over the race weekend in Australia. Because we had Dave and Hill there. Crofty was there doing a lot. So I know Sky were doing a big thing on Adelaide. So we were driving some old cars, driving the old Leighton House car with Beltry. So you get to do all those sort of things, and now he's moved me up to Adelaide Hills, and I'm sat looking out into this absolute goddess of landscape with wine vineyards in front of me. So I'm going to be honest and say this one is pretty good. If you're talking actual roles in F1 that are great, it's the hardest job in F1. I'll never, anyone who works at the ground level of F1 will tell you straight away, being a tyre man is so physically demanding, physically tiring, and it becomes your baby. No one touches your tires, and yeah, the love and the energy that you put into being a tire man. I'm going to get one of the tire men actually to come on the show one time, and they can back up what I was saying about it, because it becomes part of your life, and you end up falling in love with literally your tires, even though you hate it 'cause it's so hot. It's so satisfying. It's so amazing. It's just it's your little baby. It's tire man, absolutely. But yeah, sat here now looking out onto this vineyard, doing private flights, sipping champagne. This one ain't too bad either, but for totally different reasons.
Wow, cool. Right, moving on. Hell's Ha Ha on Threats says, how do you feel about the calendar? We often hear the drivers' perspective about extra races, but how do you and kind of the rest of the crew feel about the ever-increasing calendar?
Again, yeah, I think I've touched on this one before, and it's for me, for the drivers it's bad because it's physically demanding, but you've got to bear in mind, rolls back to literally 30 seconds ago what I'm talking about. As we're sat here today, okay, it's Monday morning. Pretty much every team now in Melbourne unpacking freight, working on the cars. They will have been there since last Friday, working, getting things set up, getting the sea freight done. So again, every race weekend could be 8-9 days for some of the crew on the team. So even though it's really bad for drivers, for the actual crews, for the team crews, the garage technicians, the mechanics, it's so much worse than what we're doing. So it's those that we all sort of feel sorry for. They'll leave if you do a triple header, like we do Austin, Mexico, Brazil. The only time off they get is when they're sat on a plane, and they'll be sat slumped in an economy seat down the back. It's grueling. It's hard, but yeah, it's hard for us. For a team member, it's doubly as hard, and it's those guys that the strugglers. It's those guys that things need to change for, not so much the drivers.
Listener Craig, who did the 100 seconds of DRS and actually grew up in, I think he said, in Greeley, Colorado, heard your story about your hat when we had you on, and his question is a pointed one. How much did you pay for your hat at Greeley Hat Works?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. And the answer is actually a lot of money. So let me explain. I don't know if I explained this too much. So we've all probably seen the show Yellowstone, which is fantastic. It's an amazing series. If anyone's not seen Yellowstone, go watch Yellowstone. Otherwise, this next 2 minutes is probably going to be really irrelevant to you. So, the characters are amazing. The set is really good. There's a few standout characters. One of them is a character called Rip. He actually, is it Cole Hudson, I think, is the actor, but he actually waved the checkered flag in Austin last year. So, yeah, these guys are pretty big. But his hat, his cowboy hat, is insane. They just look really good. So I was just researching things from the show, and it turned out that all of the hats for the Yellowstone show were all made at Greeley Hat Works in Colorado. So I was like, oh, wow. So when I was for the biking, I thought, oh, let's have a drive up. And then you get into this building and it's not everything's custom made, that's lies, but you literally can have a custom made hat. They put the old measuring device on, and then that, I got a really strange head size. Like a lot of the hats I get, normally I have to go to the youth section. So to actually get a hat that fits me is amazingly hard work. So they were like, oh yeah, nothing fits you. And I'm like, well, no shit, nothing fits my head. You got one for kids. And they're like, no. So they ended up making a replica of Rip's hat bespoke for me in the shop. And it took a couple of months, and then it was sent down to Austin. It was sent down in the poster there. Answer to the question was probably about $600, which is cheap in reality. But as Mr. Vale will know, if you wear that hat in the UK, people are going to just bully you and give you a hard time. Like, you can wear it in the USA anywhere, no one cares. In the UK, people will be like, what are you doing? So basically, I bought a $600 ornament for my house. This hat just sort of hangs there, like, I can't wear it, I can't do anything with it. So I thought, one of those purchases you look back on after you've done it and just thought, what was I thinking? But no, it's great. It's good. And I urge anyone in that area, go to Greeley Hat Works, go and get a hat off those guys. They're a proper family little business. They're fantastic. And, we should support them. And what they've done for the show Yellowstone, if you're a fan, go and get a bespoke hat made. Yeah, they're expensive, but my God, they are so good quality. They're insanely good.
Well, there we are. So, moving on, Jennifer Lecluse says, this might be an odd question, but when drivers are discussed, sometimes some are considered technically minded and some are deemed not technically minded. However, they all give feedback to the team. So, in your view, what makes one driver more technical than another? And who was the most technical versus the least technical of all the drivers you work with? And is it really a big deal anyway to be more technical and be able to kind of help with that? Or do you just need to give feedback to your engineer? There we go. Try and break that question down. But it's a good one.
That's an excellent question. So the reality is that the driver feedback is always key. So if you've got like a driver who's, let's say, a rookie. So we just spoke about Oliver Bearman. He's not going to give you any real massive insights into that Ferrari, apart from, I'm sliding around this corner, I've got understeer here, I've got oversteer here. The car's twitchy through this corner. If he goes back to the team and goes, yeah, I think we need to drop 0.4 in the rear. We need to do this with roll bars, do that with roll bars. From a team perspective, you'd be like, well, I mean, okay, but you have zero to back that up with. So a driver who's got a ton of experience. So, Valtteri is pretty good. Valtteri likes the car set in a certain way because that's the way he likes to drive the car. Then he can tell by the feel of the car, what direction they need to move into. Whereas if you've got a driver who isn't so technically minded, he isn't going to give you that same precise level of feedback on something. He's going to be like, yeah, we're sliding around this corner. And then the engineering team then have to go and figure out, well, why is the car sliding? Again, versus a driver who's going to say the car's sliding, let's try making this change to counter that, because he's got the technical experience to say, I know that will help that in that corner. So it sort of like helps the team. What if you're going to have a rookie coming in or someone who's not that technically minded? You need to play it minded. That can literally break down his feedback into, okay, well, let's try this. Because if a driver's got no real idea on how a car setup is, not through his own fault, if he doesn't have that level of experience, then you're relying on the engineering team to do that. So Michael was really precise. I'm going to use Schumacher again because that's an easy option. Michael's really good technically at setting a car up. That guy would know, he would know by driving the car exactly where the car's weakness is, what setup he wants, where the car would be technically. You've got to look at, the more younger driver group coming in, the rookies. So again, if you had to be fair, a little bit like what we got Joe, who probably isn't so technically minded as Valtteri. He's more like, the car's doing this, the car's doing that. Valtteri will be much more technically minded. But they have a great dynamic where they'll both share the information. When they share that information, it makes the other car easier to set up. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Do you understand what I was sort of saying?
Yep.
Yeah. So if you have a team partnership where they're not sharing the information, you're actually screwing your own team over. You're screwing your second driver over, and that does happen. You can have drivers who don't want to share the information. I use Nico and Lewis, for instance. They never ever, when they would go for the championship battle, which is probably understandable, they'd never want to share car data. And you'd often hear, well, the other car's doing this, and they'd be like, I'm not interested in what the other car's doing.
Wow.
So yeah, you can also have a little bit. Yeah. That's quite common. And again, I mentioned Michael's actually pretty clear with that. Sometimes Michael will be in the car and they'll be like, well, Nico's doing this with his car. Michael will go, oh, I don't care what Nico's doing. I'm focused on what I'm doing. And so you do have that too.
We had a question from Midfield Pod, and it's about the strategy that Sauber will use. And their question is, occasionally you have sort of bold and alternate strategies compared to the rest of the field. And they said they're not sure your job title and what you would see. Are you privy to the information before the race when you know that Sauber might be zigging when some of the rest of the field might be zagging, like the alternate strategies, different tires, and so on and forth? Do you see those ahead of time, and do you watch for those?
You tend to have an idea on the Saturday nights the direction the team's looking in, but really a lot of the strategy is finalised on the Sunday morning before the race. So it's you sort of do. Sometimes when you're down the back end of the grid, it's good to try and do an alternative strategy, because otherwise, like if you look at Jeddah, which I know you guys are split on whether it was a good or bad race.
Oh
yeah, you got everyone starts on. You got.
I think we.
Paul, we're losing you. I think
you got to run two. You got the hard tire that is going to do a full race easily without no issue. Then you've got the soft tire. Oh, really?
No, you're still
back.
You're back.
You're back. It's the Australian airwaves. It's all that. It's all too many koala bears outside on the internet lines, I think, are sitting on things. But you're now fully back. We can see you again and we can hear you again.
Yeah.
So you were just talking about the tires, hard tires, soft tires. Go.
Yeah. So again, a team strategy, you're going to start on soft because it's really easy to do which end is going to go into a full race distance. So your strategy is really boring. And if everybody does that, you have a really average race, like probably Jeddah was. So you roll the dice and do something different, which there isn't a lot you can really do. So it's a really hard one with strategy. Sometimes changing it up just doesn't work.
Cool. Right, last one from Threads came from Donna Andrea. And she said, any driver superstitions that you're aware of?
That's a good one. Yeah, there's some. I think Lando always gets in from the left-hand side of the car. Some drivers get in left front first, right foot first. Hell yeah, there are a lot of there could be a lot of different superstitions from the guys. Some of which we don't see. They happen in their driver room. Some of them will have. They'll put the left sock on first. They'll tighten their right boot first. Yeah, I don't tend to see too many of them, but yeah.
We have one from Twitter from Michael A. Did Jack Villeneuve piss off too many people for being outspoken?
Well, Jack is an outspoken guy. The fact that he's in the press now, it can be worrying. But listen, you have two types of people. You have somebody who's just gonna. I mean, excuse my language here. You have some people who just bullshit and just walk around, prancing around. He's your best friend 1 minute, in your back the next minute. I'd rather someone be upfront and honest. So sometimes criticism can be hard and unwarranted. Jack can sometimes divide opinion the way that he acts and behaves, just purely on the basis that he says it how it is. I'm on his side. I say it how it is. I literally am in the camp of like, if it's crap, say it's crap. So yeah, some people, especially in this sport, they want to be wrapped in a blanket and not hear the honest truth. How you deliver it is important, and I think he has pissed people off, for one of the better phrase. He has annoyed people, but he's annoyed people because he's basically said what we're all thinking, and no one's afraid to say. So you either accept hard truths and listen and move on and put your big boy pants on, or you sit there sucking your thumb. And for me, it's people don't like hearing hard truth. You have to deliver it. Yeah, you have to deliver it in a better way sometimes. And you got to bear in mind, Jack is a racing driver. He's been a driver all his life. He's not media trained as such. He hasn't gone to acting school, none of this stuff. He just says what he says. And I respect someone more for that than someone who just panders around and says one thing on one hand and on the other hand says something different. That for me is a weak person.
Okay, coming into the final furlong. 2 last questions then, Paul, from the Book of Faces, or Facebook, I believe they call it. Stu Dilly says, what's the biggest bust-up you've seen in the pit lane?
It's like hazing. Shoes on the other foot now, Brian.
I'm trying to figure out what is bust-up. What are we talking about? Like a fight, a crash?
Yeah, it means a fight, Brian,
exactly.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, fight. God, you need to be hip and trendy, mate. I
don't know if I need to be.
I'm going to go back to. I'm going to go back to Michael versus Coulthard in Spa. What was the year? Was it 97 or 99? And set the scene. Really wet weather, really soaking wet race. You can't see to the point like nowadays it would just be red flagged. Michael, I think, was coming up to lap Coulthard in the McLaren, or there was some, whatever it was, but the team was telling DC to let Michael pass. So Michael's basically driving up, and you can't see it. There wasn't a right or wrong with this one. Michael just couldn't see in front of him. Michael's leading the race. He's aware that DC's going to let him by. And he just doesn't see him and literally drives straight into the back of Coulthard in the rain, takes his corner off. They both managed to get the cars back to the pit lane. And then the camera pans to Michael steaming down, the look on his face of he just wants to murder DC. Like he's stomping into the McLaren garage, and McLaren mechanics sort of, that's probably the best. And it's, Michael shouldn't have done that. But that's just the passion these guys go through. But that's going to be one. You don't really see that many bust-ups in spats as such, apart from the dramatised crap between Horner and Toto, which is always dramatised. You don't really see any. That's going to be the best bust-up, I would say, would be DC and Michael. It was just sort of like, oh, wow, whoa, yeah. You know what I mean? One of those.
I do remember that one. I remember you could actually see, to your point, you can't see the car. Michael's coming up on the car, and it's like so much spray, and he hits him, and then the famous, as you talk about, the famous charge down the pit lane to get to the McLaren garage. The last question we have is from Michael P. When big, and I'll read it as it is, when big financially strong teams like Mercedes are on the lookout for a replacement for, in this case, Hamilton, why are experienced drivers like Magnussen and Hülkenberg not in play?
This is going to sound like an awful answer. Commercial value. Nico and Kev are good drivers. They do a good job. They're not the they're drivers in theory who probably never going to be world champions. There's not to say that there's anything wrong with them. But they're not like your punchy driver. So again, if you're just going to talk financially, Lewis going to Ferrari, Ferrari's stock of what they had as a company went through the roof. So they paid for Lewis Hamilton within 5 minutes of him being announced that he signed because of the commercial value. All of the commercial partnerships that Mercedes have got, some of their big hitters, are there because of Lewis Hamilton as well. So I know some of those commercial partners will then look and think, well, actually, we're going to go possibly to Ferrari now. So then Mercedes start to lose money. Their stock value lowers. They find it harder to get these commercial people because they haven't got, let's say, an A-League star player. So it's like Tom Brady, if he comes out of retirement for the 15th time, then goes and signs for, say, New York Giants, they go through the roof in terms of what they can then attract in terms of partnerships. So again, with Mercedes, to sign a Nico or Magnussen, it's not really going to add much on the value of the company. It's not going to attract their big players. It's not going to, isn't I'm not going to say no one's interested in a Hulkenberg or Magnussen, but that's sort of what I'm saying. You know what I mean? Someone who's a big hitter.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense because, like you say, there's a lot of good drivers on the grid, but you need to be more than a good driver. You need to be able to take it to the bank, basically. And Mercedes are going to need. You kind of touched on earlier on when you're talking about, would Alonso go there or would it be Verstappen? Because that's what they're going to need. They're going to need someone that, in theory, could deliver a world title for them. And even if Nico Hulkenberg, like for argument's sake, could win a world championship in the Mercedes, they're never going to take that gamble on him because they need the A-list. They need the big name, right? So makes a lot of sense. So
that's exactly what it is. You need that poster boy almost. You need that big Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes thing. He's going to be selling your cars because he's Lewis Hamilton, which is ultimately what most of these teams are in there for. So yeah, it's literally probably the only reason.
Well, thank you ever so much to everybody who sent a question in for Paul. Thank you, Paul, for answering all of those. And thank you, internet gods, for just about keeping Paul's connection stable, although at some points he did sound like Arnold Schwarzenegger underwater. But
only towards the end. Only towards
the end. It kept on in there. So thanks again for doing that, Paul.
Paul, you're the man. Thank you so much, man.
No worries.
And if you want to hang around, we're going to do the Australia preview now because we're in race week and you're literally there because you're in the right country compared to me and Brian. So we might come back and ask you about the 2023 race because you were there and that was a little crazy. But we have the Australian Grand Prix coming up. Been knocking around since 1928 because it featured a load of non-F1 championship races that me and Brian still haven't worked out what those are. It bounced around for a while. It sort of settled into Adelaide from 1985 to 1995. Finally kind of came into the FIA Championship, and then it's been at Albert Park since 1996, which is where we will be seeing them race next week, where they will do 58 laps of the 3.28-mile track. It'll be the 26th Grand Prix. Michael's won it 4 times. Jenson Button and Vettel have won it 3 times. Current people on the grid, we've got Lewis and Fernando have won it twice. Max, Valtteri, and Charles have each won it once. And I know you like...
Yeah, Valtteri's win was one of the most dominating wins. If you remember that one in Australia, he lapped almost everybody. I think it was just Lewis and Max that were close, and then the Ferraris at the edge of the first lap, and then everyone else was down. I wonder if I have that right.
Was that the one there when we were asking him when he came on this pokey little show about what his favourite race was, and he almost gave this one, but he said that the hangover was too big from that one? Was the Australia the hangover race?
I think so.
Russia.
Try Russia.
And then you like the stats, Brian. I'll let you do the couple of stats here.
Yeah, sure. So 40% of winners have started on pole. The top 4 has given us almost all the winners, 88% of them. As Rob said already, 26 races, 26 Grand Prix, 58 laps. And 2023, let's talk about that for a second. It was chaos. And the stats there are amazing. A, it's the first and only race to ever have 3 red flags in the history of Formula 1. B, only 12 people crossed the finish line because of the carnage in those red flags, in particular the red flags at the end of the race on, I think it was like lap 56, 58. It was with 2 left when chaos happened. And I felt bad for Carlos because he got a penalty for spinning Fernando around on that last restart. And he got a 5-second penalty, and everyone was bunched up because they just started the last 2 laps, and he finished last, 12th. He was the last finisher.
It was nuts. We had, you're right, we got... 3 of them. We had Charles got spun around by Lance Stroll on the first lap, and that was Charles out of it. Albon crashed and sent debris everywhere a few laps later, and that's when we got the first red flag. K-Mag, we got another red flag for his smash up, and then after the restart, they had another smash up where both the Alpines collected each other. And like you say, the worst thing about Carlo was that he got a penalty for a lap that never counted because if you remember, they hadn't gone far enough around the circuit for the first sensor to be tripped. So then when they restarted that, everybody went back to where they were pre-crash. And it's like, So Sainz is probably the only person ever to get a penalty for a lap that never existed.
Right. And it caused him to finish last of the finishers.
So you were there, Paul. What what on earth is going on in the pit lane? Probably during that final one where the final red flag restarts and then like Alpines went everywhere and there was just cars everywhere. It was like playing Destruction Derby on the PlayStation or something. It looked insane.
Yeah, it's frustrating because you don't actually know where you are in terms of the race. Like you get brought back in the pit lane, and we thought we were like P7, like you said, we didn't trip the first sensor. So for the teams, it's horrendous because you're sort of like loading the grid trolley, unloading the grid trolley, running back and forward. It's just the unknown. You're waiting for someone to tell you what the hell is going on. We're sort of hearing it at the same time as you guys hearing it. So like when the FIA tried to figure out what's going on, sometimes you guys at home are hearing it before we're hearing it, and we're just sort of like waiting for news to come through where we're actually meant to be. So, yeah, it's pretty frustrating actually.
So, I guess, as you heard and as you said already, I wasn't a huge fan of the first couple races, and Rob and I were a little split on that. I am very much excited for Australia, but I don't know we've always had the greatest races come out of Australia. I'm waiting for something to happen. It's the meme with the guy with the stick and like, come on, do something. That's what I'm waiting for from this season. So I'm optimistic, but I'm not banking it on history, if that makes sense. I'm just banking it on hope.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think it's another one that unfortunately, and there's a number of tracks like this, and we kind of already said that Bahrain and Saudi, they need safety cars. They need something to inject a bit of spice into the race. So you never want to see people crash out, but Australia feels like it's another one that kind of would need it. So I don't want anything kind of disastrous, anybody to get hurt, but we probably could do with a safety car at least somewhere around the middle of the race just to kind of spice things up a little bit. And I don't want to send any ill wishes to anyone, but Lance Stroll, if you are going to spin anybody out on the first lap this time and cause them to retire, if you could aim at Max's car just to let us have a little bit of no.
Maybe this is
if he has to take somebody out. That's all I'm saying.
Maybe this is the race where Magnussen says, I'll just take the 10-second penalty and cuts through the gravel traps on purpose at full speed and goes from like 18th to 1st and then slows the whole pack down.
Yeah,
No?
There's got to be a rule in the rule book somewhere because I saw you discussing that on the Discord that if it seems now that there's not enough penalty for someone wanted to do that and just do something stupid and drive right through a chicane on purpose and just take the penalty and not give any places back, you could probably, especially if you get the teammates in the right position, you could really help out massively. And I'm not sure that there's got to be something more that they could do than just give the 10 seconds. There has to be like a unfair sportsman penalty or something. I don't know.
I don't know. Paul,
Did we not just discuss Felipe Massa's lawsuit? Wasn't that based around? Have I got the right year here? Was that based around the Renault incident with? So which is basically teammates trying to help out another teammate. Basically you're basically saying cheating is fine in that scenario. But look, I actually agree. I think the last race, what Magnussen did to help Hulkenberg get a point was nothing short of genius.
Yeah,
it should be celebrated, the fact that actually he was ballsy enough to do that, and it worked really well. It made for a terrible race because you could see it happening a mile off. But look, that point for Haas is worth so much money to a team that's got no money. So with teammates cutting corners, getting penalties, taking advantage. Yeah, keep that coming. I don't see that an issue. I fully support it.
Heard it here her first, folks. So let's keep an eye out that in Australia when, me and Brian will need to get up at ridiculous times to watch it, whereas it'll be quite easy for Paul because it'll just be a regular day.
Exactly that.
All right. Well, Paul, thank you for joining us from the vineyard as you hang out and tour around Australia. I know you were up early, and we appreciate that. Good luck with the race this coming weekend. Thanks for taking all those questions, and as always, being so much fun to learn from. So we appreciate you, and we appreciate everybody.
No worries. I just want to
go.
I just want to quickly say something that's just happened to me, giving insight into my job. I'm just trying to search around this apartment I'm in to try and get a little bit better signal. I was going to walk out the front. I know I've got a pair of shorts in the bag yesterday that went to Adelaide Motorsport Festival, so I've just put them on, and they're really quite soggy and wet. And I was thinking, well, I didn't go anywhere in the pool. So I've just emptied the bag out, and Beltry's race suit is in there, which is soaking wet through sweat because yesterday was really hot and humid. So,
Oh God, there's the clip. That's the clip for the week.
Hope everyone else has a really good day. Yeah, hope everyone else has a really good day. That's how my day. That's literally how my day's just started. Speaking to you guys and now being covered in Beltry's sweaty overalls. Oh, fantastic!
Oh my God! Oh man! And on that bombshell, it's time to end. Everybody, thanks so much for listening. We'll see you in 1 week's time, or we'll hear from you in 1 week's time, or you'll hear from us, I guess, in 1 week's time when we recap the Australian
Nailed it, Brian.
Grand
Nailed it.
Prix. Be well, everyone.
Smooth.